everyone, Paul from High Tech Legion, and we'll be taking a look at the ASUS UEFI BIOS utility for not only the Sabertooth but also the Gryphon. This is an actual overview of the UEFI BIOS for the tough boards. They have added a micro ATX board to the tough line, and that will be the Gryphon. But this right here happens to be the Sabertooth. Basically, it's the same BIOS or UEFI BIOS utility, so we'll go ahead and go through it. There might be a couple different things in the Gryphon, but basically I can guarantee you 99.999% of it is going to be in that BIOS. So if you see the same video for the Gryphon as you do for the Sabertooth, you'll know why. But in any case, let's go ahead and start. If we start from the top, of course, we have the tough logo. And then it says UEFI BIOS Utility Easy Mode. We go to the far right where we have the Exit Advanced Mode. Then underneath that to the left, of course, is the time, the date and time. Now with the new BIOS, you're going to notice that you could actually change your settings in Easy Mode. A lot of the settings can be changed from Easy Mode. Now, not to say that you couldn't do it the last time, but it wasn't as involved. Now ASUS is giving you the option to change settings. So we can change the time from here. Of course, if you go to the right, it tells you what motherboard you're using, what BIOS version, the CPU type, the speed of the CPU, the total memory that you have, and of course the memory frequency. Down below that is your CPU information. It will tell you what your CPU voltage is and what the temperature is. Right now I'm at 37 degrees Celsius. I am using an H100i by Corsair. It's an all-in-one liquid cooler. So I have some fairly decent temperatures. You have to remember I live in Florida, so it's fairly warm here. I keep the house at 77 degrees during the summer with the air conditioner on. So now this is something new for the DRAM information. You actually could set your DRAM to your XMP settings right from Easy Mode. You can disable it, and of course that will go ahead and change it. It'll send you back to Advanced Mode and then come back to the XMP. Or you can go ahead and click it on Profile 1, and of course it's going to go ahead and change that, and now we have our XMP profile. Further to the right is our fan settings. Fan settings can be set to standard, silent, turbo, or manual right from the Easy Mode in the BIOS now. As you can see, you have the option for your CPU fan settings. Below that is your system performance, which of course is either the power saving mode, normal mode, ASUS optimal mode, and then to the very right, depending on what you're looking at. Now you can see where if I hover over optimal, it's going to show you the blue inside of the triangle there. Now we have the boot priority below that. Now this is very easy. You could just move whatever you want, and basically there's your boot manager. So now you don't have to worry about going into the advanced mode in order to do it. Below that we have our shortcut keys. Now our shortcut keys will bring you to the Digi Power Control, power management, etc. This is all your stuff in advanced mode. So if we went ahead and hit Digi Power and Control, it's going to bring us right back to Digi Power and Control. So let's go back to Easy Mode real quick. Then we have Advanced Mode, which is F7. Now this is something new, which is SATA information. SATA information will show you what SATA ports you have populated, and will also tell you what you have there. So as you can see, I have a Patriot Pyro, and I also have an ASUS Blu-ray drive connected at this time. Boot menu, F8. There's your boot menu there. And then of course, if you want to go to default settings, load optimized settings, F5. It's right there in front of you. Everything is there. There's a lot more to do in Easy Mode right now. So let's go ahead and go to Advanced Mode, and let's look at the meat and potatoes here. In Advanced Mode, we can start out, we can go with My Favorites, and basically when you use My Favorites, you cursor over the item, press F4 on the keyboard or right click on your mouse, and it'll add it to my favorites. So when you come back into here, then you'll have a whole bunch of stuff under your favorites. When you want to remove it, you just do the opposite. You just hit delete. So that's something new, which is my favorites. Basically, I guess what we could do is let's go ahead and do this. Add to my favorites page. Success, okay. Now let's go to my favorites. And there you see it, load, line, and calibration. Now we want to remove it, click remove. While we're in my favorites, I'm going to go to another new setup, which is called Quick Note. Quick Note is basically something that you might want to save. So just say you're trying to overclock this to 4.8. So you could type in 4.8 with settings of VID 1.275, no good. And now basically, if you don't remember what you did, you've got it all there in your quick notes. Just click save and quit and you have it. So when you hit quick note again, there you go, it's there. Last modified. When you click last modified, it'll bring up a log. It'll show you what you did the last time you modified the system. And you could also save that to USB. Let's go over to the main. Of course, the main, really nothing much has changed here. It shows you your BIOS information, of course your CPU information, memory information, system language. You can change your date and time in here also. And of course security if you want to set an option to put a password on your BIOS. Next we'll go to the AI tweaker and let's go to the front screen here. Alright, as you can see, CPU target turbo mode speed is 3900 megahertz, your DRAM speed, your cache speed, DMI peg, and graphic speed. Coming down, this has not changed, it's the AI overclock tuner. Basically right now you have 3 modes, auto, manual, and XMP. I have it set to XMP at the present time, which will give me profile 1 because there's only one profile on my Corsair memory that I am using right now. I'm using the Vengeance Pro, which you can read the review on or about June 3rd. Next we'll have the CPU strap. You have different straps you could set it to, 100, 125, 167, and 250. With all my tests, I've never been able to get to 167 or 250. Between 100 and 125, I could change my straps to, and I could usually boot up my system and get some decent overclocks with it. Right now, it's set to auto. Of course, the PLL selection. You have auto, LC PLL, and SB PLL. This is something you don't have to play with. ASUS has really tuned this board. Filter PLL, same thing. You have different filters, but you could really keep it on its auto mode. Of course, your base clock frequency, if you want to change that manually, that's right there. Your multi-core enhancement, which is the next one down, you have auto or disabled. And then as we scroll further down, let me bring this up a little bit for you. You have your CPU core ratio, which right now I have on auto. You can change it to sync all cores and change it to per core. You have your minimum CPU cache ratio and your maximum CPU cache ratio. This basically sets your turbo or your frequency. If you don't want, after you performance tune your system, overclock your system, if you don't want your ratio to fall below a certain number, basically put in your cache ratio there. Just say if you don't want it to fall be underneath 4 gigahertz. What you'll do is you'll put 40 and 40 here under the auto and it won't fall below. Of course, we have our internal PLL voltage, which you have enabled and disabled. You really don't need to use that. Leave it on the auto rules. Base clock frequency, you could change that from 10, you could change the divider to 100, from auto to 100, 133 or 100 and 100. Now, of course, since I already have XMP on, my DRAM frequency is already chosen for me, but yes, you can choose other frequencies. OC Tuner, this is something new. So, I mean, I know you guys are familiar with the OC Tuner, but they've changed a little bit. So now, if you leave it as is, that means the settings that you have here. Now there are two other settings, ratio first and then base clock. Ratio first is basically going to set the ratio of your CPU frequency. So all it's going to do is overclock your CPU frequency. So it'll auto tune it to like 42, so you'll be at 4.2. If you go to base clock, what it's going to do is going to set the strap to 125, and it'll give you an auto tune of roughly 4.25 gigahertz. Then of course we have the EPU saving mode. Our DRAM timing control, as you can see, nothing's really changed. You can still change all your primary and secondary timings here. I usually leave most of the stuff to auto. What I might play with, of course, is up here and set different timings, maybe when I'm overclocking or whatever, just to make sure that I have everything stable. Just my command rate, my RAS, my cast to RAS, etc., and my latencies. But basically it's the same, really nothing has changed. This is your RTL initial values. And of course, you have your MRC fast boot. I leave all this stuff to auto. There's really no need to change it. Unless you're really into tweaking RAM to the tightest it could possibly be, there's really no need to change any of the auto rules. Digi power and control, here we go. CPU load line calibration, CPU voltage frequency. The load line calibration is basically your V droop. It has auto and there are 8 levels. What I found is a lot of times when I'm going to higher levels, I'm going to use level 8. Haswell is a pretty tricky animal to actually tune. CPU voltage frequency, auto or manual. If you set it to manual, it's going to do like it did in the past. If you remember, we used to set the voltage frequency to about 350. Now you don't need to change that, so go ahead and leave that on auto. You got your VRM spread spectrum. You could enable that or disable it. Active frequency mode, I have that disabled. Now you have your power phase control. Depending on what you're doing, you will go anywhere from auto to extreme. So the more volts you put into the CPU, the more you're going to need on your phase control. So if you want to hit 4.8 on this system and you have a very good loop water cooled system, not an AIO, and you're going to put about 1.3 to 1.35 volts in there, you're going to want to tune it to extreme. You might want to tune it to optimize. Right now, what I have to do, and I'll show you my overclock settings for this board, I actually did set it to extreme, but because I'm not using that many volts, it was okay. I was okay with my thermal threshold. Of course, CPU power duty control, you have either T per over extreme. Current capability, anywhere from auto to 140. Right now, the sweet spot is going to be about 120 on these processors. CPU power thermal control, 130, that's its default. DRAM current, of course, 100. You really don't want to play much with the DRAM on this because, believe it or not, when you start playing with dividers on the DRAM and overclocks, it really doesn't like sometimes to actually have overclocked RAM. You might not get the higher frequencies. DRAM frequency, voltage frequency, auto and manual. Of course, put on manual, 300, there you go. And then we have our power phase control, which we could go auto, optimized, or extreme. So let's go back and then we'll go to the CPU power management. Of course, enhanced Intel speedstep technology. We usually used to shut that off when we overclocked. Now they're saying there's really not much need to go ahead and do it. As well as the C states when you're overclocking, they're saying that you really don't have to. Now, of course, I'm old school. I like to shut this stuff off. So have I seen any better frequencies with my processor that I have? No. What I could achieve with everything basically the way it's set is what I could do if I start shutting things down. There is one thing that you definitely still want to shut down, and I'll show you what that'll be in a few minutes. Extreme voltage, that's still the same, disabled or enabled. You have a CPU core voltage. Of course, you can set that to manual, offset, or adaptive. When you are performance tuning, please set it to manual. If you set it to offset or adaptive, you're not going to get as high of of an overclock as you would without it. Keep that CPU current with the Haswell chips at a constant. You don't want it fluttering up and down, because believe it or not, if you set it to offset or if you set it to adaptive, you can go as high, even if you have 1.25 volts in there or 2.7 volts, you can go as high as 1.35 volts with it on adaptive, and you don't want that to happen. You're going to burn your chip. CPU cache voltage. Now, if we go ahead and set the core voltage, let's go ahead and set that to manual, and of course now I could put my numbers in there. All I got to do is type in my numbers. CPU cache voltage, of course, there's your cache voltage. You could set it to manual offset. So this is basically what the cache voltage is actually kind of like, in a sense, let's not call it a fake voltage, but it's going to give it a little bit more volt so the processor has a little bit more oomph. I have not played with it. There's really no need to play with it. Your system agent offset, CPU analog voltage, CPU digital voltage. This is basically the same stuff. SVID control, CPU input voltage, DRAM voltage, PCH core. All this stuff you're probably fairly familiar with. Then of course we have the clock crossing VBoot and clock crossing reset voltage. I basically don't touch this stuff. Auto rules are perfect. Spread spectrum. Shut it off if you're overclocking. That's all I could say. So that is everything under the AI tweaker. So let's now go to advanced, and let's go back to the CPU configuration. Again, right here, it shows you your CPU configurations, what stepping you have, etc. Adaptive thermal monitor is enabled. Hyper-threading, of course, I have enabled. PCH configuration, you have your PCI Express configuration, which you can set your speeds. Rapid start technology, and of course, Smart Connect technology. Let's go to the SATA configuration. Oops. All right. As you can see, it's an ACHI mode. Smart status check is enabled. Aggressive LPM is on auto, and of course now we have our denominations of your SATA ports. Now, I could change this. This is something new in this BIOS. You could go ahead and change that to whatever you want, so you could name your SATA ports. That's why you have these little arrows here. So basically, Patriot Pyro, I could put main, I could put secondary, I could put on the third one if I have something populated, I could put disk drive or whatever I want. Now you can name your SATA ports. Of course, hot plugs, etc. are there. And now if you're going to be zeroing out or doing a smart erase on or secure erase on your SSD, you want to put the hot plug, because a lot of times you have to unplug it and put it back in order to get through the security settings. So let's go ahead and go back to system agent control. CPU audio devices enabled. Graphics configuration, of course. Primary display auto disabled on the iGPU multi-monitor right now. DMI generation 2. Now this is your PCI Express. I have them set to auto, but you can change it to any generation you want or keep it on auto. I don't have a problem keeping it on auto. It automatically detects what I put in there. Memory configuration, memory remap, that's enabled. USB configuration. Nothing much has changed here. Enabled, disabled, legacy, same stuff. And now we have our USB ports. And as you can see, I have them all enabled. Platform miscellaneous, PCI native power management, disabled. Onboard devices, HD audio controller, SATA controller, PCI Express, slot black bandwidth. You can set that and change it to X4 or X1 mode. This, of course, is the tough board, so you have to remember this is made more for SLI and for reliability. Intel LAN controller. This has an Intel LAN on it. It's enabled. APM. As you can see, this is just for your power settings. And network stack configuration, which I usually keep disabled for my purposes. Next we go back to our monitor here, and of course it's going to tell us what my CPU temperature is, my motherboard temperature, my fan speeds, my voltages, my assistance fans, etc. This board has a lot of fan headers on it. And now when we go down to the bottom, you can change your Q fan controls inside the BIOS. So you could go disabled, advanced mode, you name it, whatever you want to put it on. You could change your RPMs, you could change it to standard. Set that to auto. CPU chassis fan, of course we have everything enabled here. All you do is just set them. If you want to set your assisted fan, manual, fan off, turbo, silent, there you go. You can set everything from the BIOS here. So let's go to the boot. Of course, this is your boot configuration. Fast boot is enabled. Status support all devices. Partial initialization on the USB support. Network stack driver support I have disabled. Next boot after AC power loss is a normal boot. Hardware fast boot is disabled. Direct key is enabled. What is direct key? It allows the system to power on and go right to your BIOS setup. Boot logo display, that's basically when you're booting up, it'll say ASUS for you. You can shut that off, you can keep it on, it's your choice. I usually keep it on auto, so whatever it wants to do, it does it. You can also set your post delay time, so if you don't want to have that on, you want to see the post, you can go ahead and change this to as many seconds as you want, so you can see what's going on. Boot up number lock state on. I keep that on. I'll rather keep my number lock on. Wait for F1 if error. Option ROM, force BIOS. Interrupt 19 capture is disabled. CSM, boot device control. Now this is basically telling you where you're booting from. Secure boot, Windows UI, UEFI, I'm sorry. And then down below that, you have your boot option priorities. Boot option 1, 2, 3. And now the boot override. Excuse me. Let's go to the tools. And of course you have your ASUS Easy Flash utility. If you click on that, if I had a thumb drive in here, what I could do is I have my file on my thumb drive. It'll detect the file, click on the file. Go ahead, it'll pop up a box down here. It'll say, would you like to write these files? Yes. It'll automatically update your BIOS for you. ASUS OC profile. Basically, you could store up to 8 profiles here. And you could add your profile. As you can see up on the top, 46. You label your profile, click save to profile, whatever profile you want to save it to. When you want to load a profile, all you do is click on load from profile. Going to load from profile 1. I'm going to hit enter. It's going to get the option to say yes. So now I have my profile up. And of course now we have our SPD information. SPD information, slot 1, slot 2, slot 3, slot 4. It's going to give you your JEDEC spec and your XMP spec. Now, since I went ahead and clicked on load, let's go ahead and see what my AI tweaker says. Alright, these are my settings on what I use to bring this board to this processor on this board to 4.6 gigahertz. I have the overclocking tuner on XMP. As you can see, I have everything on auto. Base clock frequency is still at 100. Multi-core enhancement is on auto. I have synced all cores. I set my core ratio to 46. It'll automatically, all you have to do is type in the top one. Since they're synced, it'll populate the rest. DRAM frequency, of course, since I have it on XMP. Let's go to Digi Power and Control and show you what I have. I basically have everything on auto. I didn't have to do anything. Now, unfortunately, I did hit a wall at 4.6 because, as you can see on the bottom, I've got 1.255 volts in here. I did try 4.7 on this board with this processor, and evidently I don't have a 47 multiplier. I actually got it up to 1.285 with my Corsair H100i, and it would boot into Windows, but it would not stay stable, and my temperatures were a little bit high. So basically, this is all I did. I mean, there wasn't that much for me to do. Of course, I mean, I could probably tweak a little more if I really wanted to see if I could get it. But with the amount of time that I actually had right now to get this review up and this overview for you, I don't have the time to actually sit there and start playing with maybe cache ratios and different things. So as of right now, 4.6 on this board, and believe it or not, at 4.6 with the processor that I have, if you're gonna buy what do you call not an engineering sample, but you're gonna buy a retail sample, most retail samples are either 44 or 45 multipliers. So consider this a fairly good chip if I can get it to 4.6. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and click Save Changes and Reset. Now, as you can see, it'll bring up my BIOS setting change. It'll show me what I did and what settings were changed. So we're going to go ahead and click Yes. It'll go ahead and boot up. Takes a couple seconds, you know, because it's got to go through its changes. It's going to shut down the board for a second and then reboot the board. But as you can see, it's very quick to boot up. We should be in Windows in a second now. Well, everybody, that has been your overview and guide for the UEFI BIOS for the ASUS Z87 Sabertooth or the Tough boards, which now includes the Gryphon. I want to thank you, and remember, if you haven't seen it at High Tech Legion, you might not have seen it at all because we have over 1,000 videos uploaded. Visit us at www.hightechlegion.com for the full review, please. Also, subscribe to this YouTube page. You're watching this video, why not subscribe? We have a lot more coming. If you like us on Facebook, that'll be www.facebook.com/HTL Reviews. Follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/High-Tech Legion. Stay thirsty, my friends. We'll see you the next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.